Hey friends, welcome back to You Stickin With That? I'm Steffi K, and today we're talking about Christmas. That feeling we wait for all year. The excitement, the anticipation, the traditions that remind us who we are and where we came from. There's something about this season that slows us down. The lights, the music, the memories, and invites us to believe again, to hope again, to remember what really matters. And as the years go by, Christmas can start to feel different. Busier, louder, faster. Sometimes we wonder where the magic went, or how to hold on to it when life keeps changing. So today, we're asking a simple but meaningful question. Are we sticking with this Christmas? The wonder, the connection, the traditions that bring warmth instead of pressure. And how can we protect what's sacred, while still making room for joy, faith, and the kind of magic that lasts? So let's talk about it.
Hey, Steffi K got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff, tackle now, watch us glow.
You sticking with that? Yeah, we sticking with that.
And joining me today for this conversation is someone who's been a part of my Christmas story for as long as I can remember, my mom, Carol. Mom, thanks for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me. Pretty exciting.
This is great. Mom, when you think back to Christmas when you were growing up, what made it feel so magical for you?
Well, we were so lucky to be next door to my grandma and grandpa, where you walked in the door and the turkey cooking and the ham cooking and the gravy and all the everything just hit you. And then you walk in and all the lights, the Christmas tree that went to the ceiling, and the gifts piled halfway up to the top of the tree. For a small child, it was just incredible. And it just kept going from there. We had so many rules and traditions. We had to wait for everybody to get there. And usually the last ones to get there were my grandma's sister and her family. And we waited and waited and waited and watched for cars. In a little tiny town of 350 people, there wasn't much going on Christmas Eve. So there weren't many cars, but quite often the snowflakes were just falling gently down on the road. And it was just such a magnificent picture. And so my sister and I would watch in the window for cars coming. And finally, Grandma's sister and her family would come, which meant they had gifts. We had to add somehow to this pile of gifts already halfway up the tree. And finally, when they got in and got the gifts in and got their coats off and everything, we could finally eat. We were all stealing olives off the table and maybe some mixed nuts just because we were so excited. It didn't bother Grandma at all. We were just able to do whatever we felt like. Everybody came in their Christmas best, and so we ate. The food kept passing. It felt like it never stopped. And so about the time we got our plates fully overloaded, it would come the food again for a second helping. So finally the meal was over. Dishes had to be done. There was no dishwasher in Grandma's house. This was back in the 50s and 60s. She had a tiny small kitchen, smaller than I can imagine, and she put out the most incredible food. Of course, we had lefse and krumkake and spritz cookies, all these Norwegian things that she learned from Grandpa's family. Grandpa came directly from Norway.
So after you ate the meal, what did you do next?
The dishes had to be done. The older kids made up a program, and the program would be maybe 2 or 3 Christmas hymns. Everything about Christmas was about the birth of Jesus, except for the presents. So we had Christmas hymns. Then Grandpa would read the Christmas story out of the Bible from Luke 2. And he did it every year, and he held this big Bible in his big work hands. And what I remembered when I thought back on that was the Bible looked like it felt comfortable in Grandpa's hands. I know it had been, he had held that Bible many times. Anyway, with authority, he read the Christmas story, and we all listened reverently to it. Then, once that was done, we would sing another Christmas song, likely Silent Night, to get us all in kind of a Christmassy, worshipful mood. And if there were children that had Christmas pieces from the Sunday school Christmas program, they would all stand up in front of the tree, repeat their Christmas part that they had.
And then after the program, what did you guys do?
After the program, then we knew we could finally open the gifts. I'll tell you, you almost wanted to jump out of your skin because you were so excited. The older, younger kids, the ones who could read names, would be in charge of handing out the gifts. And so they would take them in no particular order. Somebody else was in charge of gathering up all the paper and all the ribbons and everything.
So would you say, Mom, that it was more about the traditions or the feeling behind them?
You know, we were so blessed, as I said, to live next door to Grandma and Grandpa, and they were affluent, I suppose, in those days, which is much different than these days. But I had assumed all my young childhood that every one of my friends at school was having a similar Christmas with their families. And all the children around the world, everything you saw on TV was happy and families were smiling. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized some people had terrible Christmases, and that made me appreciate mine so much more and my family.
You know, Christmas isn't always easy. Life changes, family changes, circumstances change. What would you say as a mom were some of the tougher Christmas seasons, and how did you learn to keep showing up with love anyway?
That's a tough question. As you know, I was a single mom all those years, and coming up with money for Christmas presents took some magic, and the magic didn't always come through. I remember one year I had gotten you bake your own, or oven bake.
Yeah, the bacon, the little baking thing that all the girls wanted.
Yeah, and I opened it up to get it ready for wrapping it in Santa Claus paper, and I realized I didn't have the tools. It wasn't put together. I had to put it together to do it. So I sat and cried for a little bit. Now I realize lots of moms had it that bad or worse. It wasn't only me that was going through that. And somehow I did get it to work, and I don't remember how. So Santa Claus delivered.
Christmas especially is a time that families come together and you get help from places that you didn't know. I remember a particular Christmas, I think I was 10, and we had gone window shopping. And we went window shopping because we couldn't afford to buy stuff. But we went window shopping, and we'd gone that day, and I happened to see some earmuffs. And it's the old plastic kind that go over your ears with the plastic strip and then the big puffy ears on the side. And probably didn't think anything of it because I maybe had pointed out several things. Well, then that particular year, I wanted a Barbie doll. And there was one gift for my brother and one gift for me under the tree before we went to our aunt and uncle's where there were more presents for everybody. And I remember I was sure that gift under the tree was that Barbie doll. Well, when I opened it, it was the earmuffs. And I had no idea. And I was, at the time, so disappointed because I didn't want earmuffs for Christmas. I probably needed them. And that was probably all you could afford that year. But what I didn't know is we did a gift exchange with the cousins, and I had the Barbie doll coming. And then also Auntie, my great aunt, also gave me a Barbie doll. So I remember in the end, I had 2 Barbie dolls that year. But what had stuck with me was the initial disappointment that I got earmuffs. But now that I'm a mom and going through some of the same things, very much am appreciating and realizing what you went through at that time, and also how important it is to have family step up and step in, or others, or neighbors, or strangers. The most magical things happen when, you get those good surprises, or people come and help when you don't know that it's coming or where it's coming from. Well, and I think that something so many people can relate to is wanting Christmas to feel meaningful even when things aren't perfect.
Well, a mother always wants her children to have the same magic that you felt, that I felt as a little kid, and I knew that I could no way pay to do that. So I just hoped that with our Christmas with the whole big family, that somehow it would all work out.
And it did, and I think the magic that you experienced as a child, we had moved Christmas to our aunt and uncle's, it was equally as magical. You know, we had the meals together, and I just remember playing with the cousins, and it was nice because we lived near them, so we could do that. You know, those families now that are separated by distance, it's much more difficult to do, but yet possible. I think with technology these days, there still are ways to bring it all together for sure. But yeah, we were blessed with being near and distant.
Something that I forgot to mention, both at Grandma's and at Pat's later, Santa Claus would almost always arrive, and he would magically come with a big sack of gifts over his shoulder and had one gift for every child. That was another magical part.
Well, and I've noticed now that, you know, it's less about what's under the tree and more about who's around it and who we're holding in our hearts. Because, like you said, we don't, like, if we even thought, what did we get for Christmas last year?
What is important is being with your family and eating together and sharing the love. Probably you'll remember the gifts that are associated with hurt or disappointment, like you were talking about the earmuffs. I didn't know that.
Well, it all worked out. It all worked out. For anyone who's listening, who's walking into this Christmas carrying grief, disappointment, or loneliness, what would you want them to know?
The day after Christmas will finally come and it'll be over and you will have survived.
And I think the main thing, too, is Christmas doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful.
Right.
So maybe the question isn't how to make Christmas look a certain way. Maybe the real question is, what are we sticking with this Christmas? The love, the grace, the moments that matter, even if they're small. Christmas has a way of turning grown adults into their 12-year-old emotional selves. You walk in feeling confident, centered, spiritually mature, and then someone says one sentence, and suddenly you're back to 2004, defending yourself in the kitchen like, I'm not even mad. There's always the one who brings up politics, which you mentioned, the one who asks invasive questions disguised as concern, the one who just tells it like it is, and the one who acts shocked when you don't show up exactly the same as you did 10 years ago. And everyone's smiling, but nobody's relaxed because we don't talk about that tough stuff. We sit on it and then wonder why everyone needs a walk after dinner.
But remember, it's generally cold outside.
Well, we're from the Midwest, and we've spent many years in Minnesota and many years in Nebraska. Currently, I live in Florida, which helps a lot, but I am back to Nebraska for the holidays. But yes, many places are cold, and so you're limited to what you can do. But I do think, in general, a walk is awesome, and we've done some of that over the years. Here's the thing no one says out loud. Silence doesn't equal peace. It just means we've all agreed to avoid eye contact with the elephant in the room and hope it doesn't knock over the tree. A lot of families confuse keeping the peace with keeping the truth buried. But peace doesn't come from pretending nothing hurts. It comes from knowing how much access people actually have to you. And that's where boundaries come in. Not walls, not ultimatums, boundaries. Boundaries are just clarity with love. Let's get practical. Here are a few ways to survive the holidays without spiraling or snapping or texting someone afterwards saying, I shouldn't have said that. Don't wait until you're triggered to figure out your limits. Ask yourself, what conversations am I not engaging in? What comments am I letting roll off? When do I step outside, literally or emotionally? Clarity ahead of time saves regret later. You don't have to correct everything. Some things don't need a response. They need distance. Not every opinion needs a rebuttal. Not every comment needs a correction. Silence can be strength when it's intentional. Step away without explaining yourself. You're allowed to take a walk, use the bathroom, help in the kitchen, leave early. You don't owe a PowerPoint presentation on your emotional needs. If you're alone this Christmas, you're not missing out. Being alone is not the same as being lonely, especially if the alternative costs you your peace. Sometimes the healthiest room is the quietest one. Love without losing yourself. Here's the heart of it. You can love people deeply and still choose boundaries. You can honor family without absorbing their chaos. You can show grace without giving everyone unrestricted emotional access. Christmas reminds us that God often shows up quietly, not in perfection, but in love. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is pause, trust, and let Him handle what we can't fix in one holiday meal. You know, there's something else that comes up a lot around Christmas. This idea that we need to drink our way through it. We joke about it, we laugh about it, needing wine to survive family gatherings, but underneath the humor, there's often something real going on. Stress, grief, social anxiety, old wounds that show up when we least expect them. And I think it's worth gently asking, what are we actually trying to numb? So the other day I was at dinner and the waitress was saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to stock up on alcohol for this week." And I said, "Okay, you're not the first person to say that. Why do we say that? Why do we do that? Is it because, families coming that we haven't seen? Do we actually not like them? We love them. We maybe don't like them, but is it because we don't know them? Is it we're dealing with our own crap? There are a lot of things there." And she's like, "I don't know why we say that. I just know I need the alcohol." Okay, and I have drank plenty of alcohol at Christmas over the years myself, so I am not pointing fingers in any way. It just made me think, what are our real things? Are we worried someone's gonna, go off the wall and say something we don't like? Or I'm also wondering if so many of us are, I don't know if you call it wearing masks or, trying to fit into a certain box of who people think we should be and how we should act. And maybe when we're on our own and we're ourselves, we feel more free to do that. But when we get back with grandma and grandpa and cousins and relatives that have known us our entire lives, we somehow seem to shut down or think we can't act like our true selves. And I'm trying to think of how can we get back to being ourselves around the people who love us the most. I mean, when you say it out loud like that, it seems crazy that we wouldn't, but we're doing it. We're absolutely doing it. I think Christmas brings out the best of us in that, we come home to see our parents or, grandma or whatever. I don't know. Does it do any good if we just sit like a lump crabby or whatever? I don't know that does anybody any good either. So how do we fix it? I'm not saying I have an answer, but I definitely am presenting the question. And if nothing else, if we throughout this holiday season can ask ourselves that question and maybe what can we do to make our gatherings a little brighter? How can we show kindness to, even if we're at our office Christmas party, what can we do? Maybe we always do this, we're like, well, maybe I'm the one that tells the inappropriate jokes, or maybe I'm the one that, drinks too much and they have to carry me home. Maybe I'm the one who, says something so crazy and everyone's just cringing every time. Well, maybe this is the year that we don't do those things. What if we do the opposite and just change it up? Just something for us to reflect and think.
Most people are really very interesting if we got to know them. And lots of times our cousins and aunts and uncles, if we only see them on holidays, we don't ever really get to know them. We hear about them from our close relatives, but we don't always hear the good. And if you think about it, those people have friends who love them and coworkers who find them very interesting, and we only know one or two things about them, and usually it's not the best things. So I would say, yeah, sit down with one of those relatives and ask them some questions about what they do and how they do and how they feel about this or feel about that, and you will find out they're really nice people, and maybe they're not, but you'll find that out too. At least you'll have a better idea of why the family gossip has been what it has been. Just love them. We're not going to fix anybody. Hopefully we can feel like we blessed somebody else's Christmas.
And I'm going to just say it. I think a lot of those stories on the family train are crap. I think a lot of times, you did something 30, 40 years ago and it's gone down through generations and everyone thinks you're still that person. Well, you're not. You shouldn't be judged your whole life for something you did, 10, 20, 30 years ago, but we do it. And even within our families. And I think that might be some of the thing too. Like maybe if, I did do something at a family gathering back in 1983, then that would just make me shy away a little bit from another one because people think I'm still that person who made that one choice. It's just, you got to look at it as it's an event in our life. Whether it's
It doesn't define you as a person.
absolutely not. And that's one thing we have to just let it go. Let it go, not continue to hold ourselves as that person who did that one thing that's not who we are. We just have to let it go. Maybe we need to insert the Let It Go song. I don't know. I don't think Christmas was ever meant to be something we survive. It was meant to be something we experience, even if it's imperfect, even if it's quiet, even if it looks different than it used to. And maybe instead of reaching for something to take the edge off, we pause and ask ourselves, what do I actually need right now? Is it rest? Is it space? Is it permission to leave early? Is it one safe person to sit next to? You can offer options, not rules. Sometimes protecting your peace looks like choosing one drink, not 5. Taking breaks outside, holding a warm mug instead of a glass, driving yourself so you can leave when you need to, or giving yourself permission to say, I'm good right now. There's no pressure to perform. And here's the thing. Christmas reminds us that God often shows up quietly, not in everything being perfect, but in the still moments. We don't have to numb ourselves to get through the season. We're allowed to be present, just as we are. So if things feel tense this season, if the room feels tight, if you're smiling on the outside, but managing a lot on the inside, you're not failing. You're navigating something layered. Look for the good. Choose what brings peace. Laugh where you can. Step away when you need to. And when you're deciding how to show up, or whether to engage at all, pause for a second and ask yourself, what will help me stay grounded here? What honors my heart in this moment? Because life takes you places, but love brings you home. Before we wrap up, just a quick note. These first few episodes are voice only while we get everything launched, but big things are coming in January. We're building towards full episodes, bringing on meaningful guests, and creating space for you to help shape the conversations we have here. New episodes drop every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, so you can build it right into your week. And before we go, I just want to say thank you to my mom, Carol, for joining me today. Mom, any final words you'd like to share?
Well, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this podcast. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks, Mom. That really means a lot to me. And before I get a lot of phone calls, we do know it's called an easy bake oven. Now. Thanks for listening to You Stickin With That? If this episode resonated, share it with someone who might need a little permission to breathe this season. Remember, understanding doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we make space to really hear. Until next time, keep the conversation going and keep listening with heart.